The South China Sea, a lifeline for global trade and rich in resources, is one of the world's most strategically vital waterways. Every year, trillions of dollars worth of goods pass through these waters, connecting Asia with the rest of the globe. Beneath the surface, vast reserves of oil, natural gas and rich fishing grounds add to the region's immense value, making it a focal point for both economic opportunity and geopolitical rivalry. For centuries, these waters have been a crossroads of commerce, culture and conflict, but today, the stakes are higher than ever. Once again, the South China Sea has become the stage for a dangerous standoff, as rival powers flex their military might and test each other's resolve. The tension is palpable, with warships from multiple nations maneuvering in close quarters, their crews on high alert, and the world holding its breath. Tensions have spiked dramatically at Scarborough Shoal, a tiny but strategically crucial reef located just off the coast of the Philippines. Here, Chinese warships and Coast Guard vessels have repeatedly clashed with Philippine ships, leading to a series of confrontations that have escalated a long-standing territorial dispute. The shoal, claimed by both nations, has become a flashpoint, with each side accusing the other of provocation and illegal activity. In a bold and unprecedented move, China has recently deployed a large naval force into the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. This show of strength marks a new, more aggressive phase in the ongoing dispute, signaling Beijing's determination to assert its claims over the contested waters. The sheer scale and sophistication of the Chinese fleet have sent shockwaves through the region, raising fears of a potential military confrontation. The Philippines, under the leadership of President Marcos Jr., has responded with resolve, vowing to defend its territory and protect the rights of its fishermen and citizens. The government has increased naval patrols, strengthened alliances with regional partners, and called on the international community for support. For many Filipinos, the defense of Scarborough Shoal is not just a matter of national pride, but a fight for their livelihoods and sovereignty. Meanwhile, China remains steadfast in its own claims, citing historical maps and legal arguments to justify its presence. Chinese officials have repeatedly stated that the South China Sea, including Scarborough Shoal, is an integral part of their territory, and have warned against what they see as foreign interference. The rhetoric from Beijing has grown more assertive, reflecting a broader strategy to expand its influence across the Indo-Pacific. With naval vessels from both sides operating in such close proximity, the risk of miscalculation or accidental conflict is ever present. Each encounter at sea carries the potential to spiral out of control, setting the stage for direct confrontations that could draw in other regional and global powers. The world is watching closely, as the crisis in the South China Sea has far-reaching implications. International media outlets are covering every development, while diplomats and leaders from around the globe monitor the situation with growing concern. The outcome of this standoff could reshape the rules-based order in the Indo-Pacific, influencing how disputes are resolved and how power is balanced in the years to come. The stakes could not be higher. At risk is not only the future of regional security and international law, but also the stability of global trade and the livelihoods of millions who depend on these waters. As the world holds its breath, the next moves by China, the Philippines, and their allies will determine whether the South China Sea becomes a zone of cooperation or a flashpoint for conflict. On September 16, 2025, the world's attention turned to the South China Sea as tensions exploded near Scarborough Shoal, a flashpoint in the ongoing maritime dispute between China and the Philippines. This area, a rich fishing ground and a strategic gateway, has long been a symbol of national pride and sovereignty for both nations, but on this day, the standoff escalated to a dangerous new level, sending shockwaves through the region and beyond. During a routine resupply mission, the Philippine fisheries vessel BRP Datu Gumbay Piang found itself under sudden and intense assault. Chinese Coast Guard ships unleashed powerful water cannons, shattering the vessel's windows and causing chaos on deck. Crew members scrambled for cover as glass flew and water flooded the bridge, leaving several injured and the ship badly damaged. The attack was not only a physical blow but a psychological one, sending a chilling message to all Filipino mariners operating in these contested waters. The situation quickly escalated as 9 Chinese ships, including a heavily armed Navy warship, moved in to encircle the area. Over loudspeakers, Chinese authorities broadcast warnings of imminent live-fire drills, heightening the sense of danger and urgency. Filipino fishermen who rely on these waters for their livelihoods were forced to abandon their catch and flee for safety, their boats dwarfed by the imposing Chinese fleet. The overwhelming show of force left no doubt about China's intent to dominate the area. This was no isolated event, it was a calculated and coordinated show of force, designed to block Philippine access to its own waters and assert Chinese control over the shoal. The standoff was marked by tense radio exchanges, aggressive maneuvers, and a palpable sense of danger, as both sides refused to back down. For the Filipino crews, every approach to Scarborough Shoal now carries the risk of confrontation, injury, or worse. China's strategy is clear. By deploying a mix of Coast Guard, Navy, and maritime militia vessels, it creates a constant atmosphere of intimidation and surveillance. Filipino fishermen and Coast Guard crews now operate under the watchful eyes of Chinese ships, never knowing when a routine trip might turn violent. This coordinated presence is not just about asserting territorial claims, it's about wearing down the resolve of the Philippines and sending a warning to other nations with interests in the South China Sea. The message from Beijing is unmistakable. China is willing to use intimidation, force, and even the threat of military action to assert its claims over these disputed waters. The presence of warships and the aggressive tactics of the Coast Guard are meant to project power and deter any challenge to Chinese authority. For the region, this signals a dangerous new phase in the South China Sea dispute, with the risk of miscalculation and escalation growing by the day. For the Philippines, these actions represent a direct assault on its sovereignty and maritime rights. The government has condemned the attacks and vowed to defend its fishermen and territory, but the challenges are immense. As tensions continue to rise, the world watches closely, aware that what happens at Scarborough Shoal could have far-reaching consequences for peace and stability in the region. The crisis in the South China Sea, already simmering with tension, took a deadly turn weeks earlier, on August 11th. What began as a routine supply mission for the Philippines quickly escalated into a high-stakes maritime confrontation, drawing the eyes of the world to these contested waters. On that fateful day, two Chinese vessels, one a Coast Guard cutter, the other a Navy destroyer, were in hot pursuit of a Philippine supply ship, determined to block its passage to a remote outpost. The chase unfolded at breakneck speed, with both sides maneuvering dangerously close in the choppy waters. In the chaos, the Chinese Coast Guard cutter and the Navy destroyer collided violently. The impact was devastating, sending shockwaves through both vessels and leaving the crews scrambling to respond. The aftermath was grim. At least two Chinese sailors lost their lives in the collision, and several others were injured. Emergency teams rushed to contain the damage and tend to the wounded, but the sense of shock and loss was palpable among the crew. One of the ships was left severely damaged, its hull torn open by the force of the crash. The incident marked one of the most serious naval accidents in the region in recent years, highlighting just how quickly these standoffs can spiral out of control. The deadly encounter exposed the grave risks of China's increasingly aggressive tactics in the South China Sea. It's not just Filipino sailors who are at risk. Chinese crews themselves now face the consequences of these high-risk maneuvers, as the line between intimidation and disaster grows ever thinner. The chaos that erupted on the waves serves as a stark warning to all nations operating in these disputed waters. Reckless maneuvers, split-second decisions, and the constant threat of miscalculation can have fatal consequences, turning political disputes into human tragedies in an instant. For Manila, the tragedy is a grim validation of long-standing concerns about China's dangerous conduct at sea. Filipino officials have repeatedly warned that such confrontations could end in disaster, and now their fears have been realized in the most tragic way possible. The South China Sea has become a volatile tinderbox, crowded with warships and shadowed by suspicion. Every encounter, every maneuver, carries the risk of escalation. A single misstep, a moment's misjudgment, could ignite a conflict with far-reaching consequences for the entire region. As the world watches, urgent de-escalation is needed more than ever. Diplomacy, communication, and restraint are the only ways to prevent further loss of life and to ensure that the South China Sea does not become the flashpoint for a wider catastrophe. After these clashes, Manila and Beijing launched a fierce propaganda battle. The Philippines released photos and videos of Chinese aggression, countering Beijing's claims that Manila was the provocateur. China accused the Philippines of ramming its ships and infringing on its sovereignty, while Manila insisted its missions were peaceful and legal. Beijing's move to declare Scarborough Shoal a nature reserve was met with a swift diplomatic protest from the Philippines. Both sides are using every tool, evidence, media, and international law, to sway global opinion. The gulf between their narratives is vast, making compromise elusive. The information war is now as intense as the standoff at sea. The world is paying close attention to China's actions at Scarborough Shoal. The United States, a Philippine ally, condemned Beijing's moves and reaffirmed its support for Manila. Canada, the UK, and Australia joined in, warning that environmental claims must not be used to justify territorial grabs. This chorus of criticism isolates China and strengthens the Philippines' diplomatic hand. Yet, Beijing remains defiant, dismissing foreign condemnation as interference. The challenge for the international community is to move beyond words and hold China accountable. The stakes upholding the rules-based order and preventing further escalation. Scarborough Shoal is more than a disputed reef. It's a strategic and economic prize. Located within the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, it's a vital fishing ground and a potential military outpost. China's control since 2012 has devastated Filipino fishermen and raised fears of further militarization. A Chinese base here would threaten Philippine security and shift the regional balance of power. The US and its allies see this as a red line. Preventing further militarization is now a top priority for Manila and Washington. The standoff is a critical test of their resolve. In 2016, an international tribunal ruled in favor of the Philippines, invalidating China's sweeping claims in the South China Sea. The court affirmed Scarborough Shoal as a traditional fishing ground within the Philippines' EEZ and condemned China's interference. Beijing rejected the ruling outright, continuing to enforce its claims with force. The Philippines now cites the award as the legal foundation for its actions. China's defiance of international law is at the heart of the current crisis. The legal victory remains a cornerstone of Manila's strategy. The ongoing clashes are a direct result of this unresolved legal impasse. For Filipino fishermen, Scarborough Shoal is a lifeline, not just a political issue. China's blockade and harassment have devastated local communities, forcing fishermen to risk their lives or face poverty. The psychological toll is immense. Fear now overshadows every trip to sea. The Philippine government's resupply missions offer some relief, but are themselves under threat. The conflict is eroding livelihoods and creating a humanitarian crisis. Protecting these communities is a test of Manila's resolve. The human cost of this standoff is growing by the day. The future at Scarborough Shoal is uncertain and fraught with risk. The Philippines is doubling down on transparency and alliances, while China faces a choice: escalate or de-escalate. A military base on the shoal could trigger a major crisis, with the US international pressure and support for Manila are crucial to deterring further aggression. The 2016 arbitral ruling remains the best hope for a peaceful solution. The choices made now will shape the region's fate: cooperation or conflict. The world is watching and the stakes could not be higher.